Welcome to another episode of the Tire Talk podcast. My name is Fernandoherrera, and in this episode, I'm very excited to be talking with Anthony Schoen, CEO of Treadwright Tires. Not only is he very knowledgeable in tire manufacturing, but he's very knowledgeable in this concept called remolding used tires. Yes, when I first heard about this concept, I was so intrigued about what is it, how it works, that I had to fly out myself to Houston and check it out, with my own very eyes. Now, before we dive in, a very special thanks to our sponsor, TireBase. TireBase is really hands down the best tire software solution out there for tire shops, tire wholesalers, or anyone selling tires, whether it's in a physical store or online. So if you're interested, definitely check them out in the link in the description below. Also, if you do enjoy this video, please help me by smashing that like button and subscribe. I do have a new guest every month. And so if you are also interested in becoming a guest, in my podcast, there is a form in the description as well called a podcast interview request form that you could fill out. And we're taking big or small businesses as long as you have a story to tell and wisdom to share. That's the type of business or that's the type of individual I want to meet and record videos with. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and begin. And I present to you Anthony Schoen. Okay, and so I want to touch base just a little bit on your background in Tire Factory, just briefly on you were chief operating officer and you guys were running anywhere between 200 and then you took it to 253 locations. How was it running, for someone who has one store, three stores, like how do you actually go around 253 stores?
Well, yeah, when you get into that large scale business and you start getting into hundreds of millions of dollars in multiple locations, Tire Factory was really unique in the fact that, back then, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, the smaller independent stores that, we talked a little bit about during the tour, they had a hard time buying at a good rate, because, it's hard to go to Pirelli or Goodyear or some of those stores and say, hey, I'd like a good buying price so I can be competitive with the other stores. That's very hard to do when you're only buying 100 or 200 tires. So what they had done, their genius, is they started buying warehouses, and then the 100 stores or 75 stores in an area would all pitch in, and then they were able to buy trailer loads of product at a good value. And they would split that up because their franchises, like any franchises, were far enough apart from each other that they didn't interfere with these other businesses and they could control sort of their territory. And so our growth was going around and talking to independents and giving them value and opportunities and the buying power of that was Tire Factory back then, and today it's marketed as Point S. By the way, great stores out in the Northwest. They do an excellent job, wonderful people, independent owners, probably some of the best operators I think anywhere in the country. But yeah, it was their franchise, so unlike a discount tire that owns by one person, their 250 stores all own a share in the company. They all have a voice, and the buying power, they all group together to help each other. So it was a pretty remarkable story that they were able to do. Okay.
Wow, that's actually... So what do you think, though, are the biggest threats, though, once you're that big?
I don't know if there's any threats to being that big that are significant. I think that you have to grow to a certain level to be able to have the price point for your consumer, because service is great, and that's how you keep customers. That Walton said it best, if you don't take care of their customer, somebody else will. And that is totally true, so I'm not trying to downplay that at all. But when you're talking about an independent store, you have to provide value, and price matters. And price is probably the number one component. And then you can add on the other things that keep them coming in. So, I think you have to be in a certain size. If I thought there was any risk today, the independents are going to need to find better ways to get product to their stores at a good enough rate that allows them to be competitive for the people around them. And that's where kind of our company fits that need, where we can provide that price, but we can do it without them needing to be part of a bigger group. But anybody that's got and for those that have a store out there that are Reading Tire Business or Modern Tire Dealer, those types of things, you can see the acquisitions and the consolidations that are happening, because that's really important, because, as I said, price matters most. And you've got to figure out a way to do that to be competitive. The big box started it years ago with Walmart, and if you look in there, you get a good price. That's why they're also my number one customer in sellout.
Absolutely.
They dominate, they know who they are, and they know who their customer is.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, Walmart's a big player, and I agree with you. There's been a lot of increase with, companies like Big Brand, Sun Auto, like just purchasing a lot of these smaller multi-location companies that I don't know if they do it just for the footprint or if it's for the strategic volume buying, but I mean, something definitely to think. But I know that you then moved from Point S to Goodyear, mm-hmm. and you had some good years as a VP Director of Operations. Mm-hmm. And why did you leave Goodyear to start or join Treadwright Tires?
That was really a tough decision. I lived in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Steve McClellan originally hired me from Goodyear Corporate, still there. I remember seeing Rich Kramer that first day. And, the leadership of the company they've been around a long time, because they understand, protecting their good name. It's something that Rich has got outside of his office, as a matter of fact. And, they do a lot of things right. They've obviously done a few things wrong. Their business model is not perfect, like any manufacturer. But they had a way of really understanding that point, that, when you're out there running stores, whether they were profitable or not, some of the things that people really were challenged to do is make sure that sign looks good. Make sure you understand that you have to protect that, and make sure that if we're putting all this money in this brand, it needs to be represented right and done the right way. And I thought that was a really good core value that their company did very well. So it was difficult for me, because I was also in Arkansas at the time, which is where their commercial division was headquartered. Actually, it wasn't in Akron. And if you're around that business where the different folks have came through acquisitions and they really cared about it, they operated as a smaller company. The feeling there was unbelievable. People there were unbelievable. They really understood the value of their brand and what they were offering. So, it wasn't anything that I sort of looked to do. I was really happy there, some of the stuff I've described, because those are things that make people stay. We had good years and bad years, and we had tough times, and, we had a Penske transition that, if anybody read about that, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars changing hands for very tough decisions that had to be made, that Steve had to make. But all in all, day after day, I just always felt very good there. I felt like it was an amazing place. So when this came around, it was more about getting back to building products. When the private equity firm came to me and said, "Hey, we want to do something crazy," and that's how we started the conversation, believe it or not. He said, I think we want to remanufacture a tire back to a new state and make new tires out of old tires. And he wasn't a tire guy or anything. He just thought, man, that'd be great. We could offer a viable product, with all these imports, and it would be sustainable and rugged and amazing. And at Goodyear, I had tried some of that stuff with medium truck about remolding the sidewalls and making it brand new, because they were disassociating themselves with anything that wasn't their brand. Back to their focus again, not right or wrong, but it was a focus. Why are we selling imports, and why are we not focused on, Dunlop and Kelly and Goodyear? I mean, the strategy made complete sense. So I kind of had the idea that, hey, much like here, there's still people that need something that's affordable, right, if we're not going to sell that. And the idea at the time was to do remolding on that medium truck side, exactly what you're seeing here, exactly the same process. But at the time, they didn't have a lot of the capital to do it. They really wanted to stay focused on the Dunlop brand. Bringing in another brand was difficult. And at the same time, this other company's talking to me and saying, hey, I understood that. I had a guy that had retired. His name was Jim Doan, and he really believed in it in Portland. And later, after he retired, a couple of years later, he came and he helped us out on a couple of the things. But all of that, I got to the point where I realized I enjoyed the beginning of my career the most. I enjoyed building products. I enjoyed the adrenaline in my veins, producing something that didn't exist, and that opportunity was too much to pass up. But a lot of it was, there were 9 people when I showed up. Okay. And half of them were in admin. We had like 4 or 5 people in the plant. We had a couple presses. Yeah. It was nuts. It was like, how are we going to build this? And my investor, Andrew Davis, was crazy, I think, in a lot of ways. He's just kind of a visionary person. Yeah. So I said, hey, if somebody's got that kind of vision and wants to try it, I'll put my resources in it. It was a difficult decision to make. But the core was really about getting back to products. Because I really did enjoy the job there. I loved their vision. They never strayed from it. It was Goodyear's, I think, niche, and I think it's kept them where they're at today. Is they understand who they are, they understand their brand, they know what it's worth, and they won't accept anything else.
Right.
And the people that are still there are doing that. But for me, it was, I got to such a level where I wasn't at the product anymore. And even when I was there, I was trying to sneak back into this, making this tire brand, and they were right to tell me no. It's like, you're getting off track here. We got to go back over here. So I decided, heck, I'll just do it.
For example, were you ever afraid that this could not work?
Every day. I still am. It's still weird because even when we grew, you were, before we turned the cameras on, you heard me talking about the supply chain and that. And that's one thing we have to really work on here is to make sure I'm getting enough of the product to build it. There's enough people that want to buy the tires. You saw I have very little inventory there. We sell out almost every day. But the trouble is getting the tires into the system. Okay. And that is where I still worry about, because we could be a $100 million company tomorrow if I had enough casings and used tires to process through. But as you saw, I always have a chunk, not all the time, but every day you'll see areas where they just don't come in. Yeah. And then I can't build them. So that's my worry today. The technology works, the customers are excited, we've done all the kind of blocking and tackling, and now to scale the business, I still worry every day, are we going to be able to get enough of the recycling in to continue to build out the line to the level that we want to in the future?
So tell me about your start in the Navy. You were a nuclear engineer.
Yes. Came from, I actually started in tires. My parents were long haul truckers. So my brother and I would spend a lot of time around their yards and that. So when I finally got into tires after school, my dad thought that was kind of funny because he said, look, if you wanted to get into tires, I could have got you a job at 16. You wouldn't have to go to school or do any of that stuff. But since my family came out of some, we'll just call them humble beginnings, the Navy was a good way to go because they have a great engineering program, great development programs. They can get you started in different fields with not only experience but pay. So your college is free, your experience is well documented. What you get is, being an interim supervisor on a nuclear submarine is an intangible kind of leadership engineering project. That's just not for everybody, and it has a lot of value. So I really enjoyed that, not so much from education, because you could probably get that anywhere, but being able to apply it and volunteer in the submarine force, which is a very narrow field anyway, was fun, exciting, and practical, because a lot of people go to engineering school but get into business or maybe merchandising or marketing, and they don't really use it. So it was really kind of interesting for me as I got a good platform and a start for building things and managing things.
So I know then after that you pretty much went to manufacturing, right?
Yeah, in switching out, this was, I have to date myself here because I'm one of those older X generation guys, but, the nuclear industry just didn't have the support nationally. It just, a lot like retreading in a way, just what is that? It's dangerous. And it's really not. You get more radiation from the sun. Pilots actually are the most exposed. Plants just aren't that way. But in 1994, they were in shutdown mode. So when I got out of the Navy and had my engineering degree and experience, I had two choices. You could basically be a shutdown operator where I'd be moving radioactive materials and equipment around the country, more of a radiological controls position. And they're in really rural areas of the country too, Tri-Cities in Washington, upstate New York. And I was younger and I thought, I need to try to do something that is a little more marketable in terms of skills. So that's where I got into manufacturing engineering, started making valve stems and metal to rubber adhesions and things like that, and went into injection molding. So I kind of used an internship period as I was getting out to sort of direct the skills into the industry. But since it was changing, I moved away from it and just started building products.
Wow.
Which was fun.
So, and I mean, doing research on you, I thought that your first introduction to the tire industry was when you started working with Tire Factory. But it appears to me that you actually had already quite a liking or an attraction to it way before then.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it from the family, because if you come from a family of truck drivers and you're sitting at dinner, they're usually talking about two complaints: fuel prices and tire prices, because that's kind of what you're wearing out, right? Other than your truck and tractor itself. So it was kind of always around, but it was a fortuitous bounce because I was, I'd done Panasonic TVs. I had done automotive manufacturing for Honda prior to that. And then I had done, moved into OnStar antenna technology. Yep. And we were a supplier to GM, and then I ran a small medical firm that processed surgical instruments and surgical trays that are used for different surgeries. So I was always in products, I was kind of doing that. And in each of those stops, I started doing more business development and software, which is more related to how inventory is taken, how you process the financials from that. So I had a background in it, and the tires just kind of came up from their CEO, Nick Odell. He called me, and I was looking to come back to Portland, Oregon, where my wife was, that's where we had met. And so we thought our twins were born then. So it seemed like a good opportunity, but I sort of bounced into it because I was doing more of their warehousing and logistics and buying. And then they used to joke with me, like, once you get into tires, you'll never leave. And I joked. I said, well, I could go back to telecommunications. I could go back to, automotive parts or whatever. But I'll have to say Nick was right. Once you start, now I'm 53 and here I am talking to you. So.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah, I didn't think so. Because I'd bounced around. That's a lot of different industries in 8 years or 9 years. But whatever, tires stuck.
Would be how, you kind of mentioned briefly how the beginning of Treadwright Tires began. So it seems to me that someone you knew approached you and they told you, hey, let's work on this project. Or how did it really begin?
Those things start with, you hear from a headhunter is what they call them. It's somebody, if you're working somewhere, it's usually a guy reaches out to you through the internet, through your LinkedIn page, that kind of thing, and says, hey, are you looking? And of course, you say, well, I'm always looking, right? But I'm pretty happy where I am. And then you'll usually get, hey, here's a prospectus on a company. Here's the products they make. Here's their challenges. And you kind of get to review them. So if you're ever, for a lot of the folks that are in these positions, that's usually what you'll get. Kind of a simple income statement, a marketing plan, products, patents, whatever they're working on. And I would say, because I was in medical, telecom, manufacturing, these different industries, I would see one every couple months or so. But I was always really happy. I could say my family and myself really loved the Goodyear opportunity. But, this one in particular was just like, it was in my industry. It was part of a technology that I already understood. Because a lot of times you'll see stuff coming out of medical or telecom, and it's all pretty basic, right? There's still bill of materials, there's products, but you're still guessing a little bit, like how that's used or who the customers are. So you're coming in a little cold a lot of times when you're reading them. But this one I really saw, there was definitely a market for it. A United States manufactured product that could be as price competitive as the imports with slightly better quality. That's a niche spot. I don't care if you're making widgets, microphones, or hats. If you've got something that, and especially even what we saw 8 or 9 years ago, that you started seeing the beginning of companies looking to be more sustainable, have a better carbon footprint, green, whatever the buzzword is today. Mm-hmm. But if you notice, a lot of places now lead with that. Mm-hmm. We have programs for that. We make sure that we are stewards of the environment. We're making sure that we're doing it cost effective and those types of things. Because when you get sustainability and price maximized, when you have a green product, because people love the idea of it, but if it's too expensive, I'm not sure, right? That happens. And,
Yeah.
But if you're sustainable and you're affordable, that becomes very different. So that's how they found me. That was the pitch they had in the deck, kind of. And it was really too much not to look at. And then, once you get into looking at it and you realize that the private equity firm had a wonderful partner, someone who believed in it, someone that was willing to do a decade. It's been 9 years.
Wow.
You don't see that because usually they have to hit quarterlies.
Yeah.
So what was unique, that was the deciding factor, was that overall capital was independently owned, or some people in the industry might call him an angel investor in a way, because he doesn't have a quarterly. He doesn't have a public fund. I always say he's one of the few people. He has more money than God, so he only answers to himself. But then he can invest in interesting things that nobody else could, because
without pressure, without expectations, really just to see where the project goes.
Yeah, is the product right? Is the market right for it? And he can be patient with that, which was really, and at times, he is the reason we're still here today.
Wow.
Andrew Davis is the reason we're here today, because we've had bumps along the way that a standard firm couldn't have got us through. They couldn't have invested that long. They couldn't have done the things that he's done to make sure we're successful. It doesn't take anything away from the employees here. It's a 50-50 deal.
It's teamwork.
But capital is always worth a little bit more than the work, because if you don't have it, it kills most companies, right? Yeah. Cash flow. Exactly. So when all those things were read in that bundle, it was hard. It was hard not to say. The work's exciting, the project's exciting, the investor is in the right channel for a company like this. It was almost, you just couldn't. You had to say, look, I love Goodyear, I love what we were doing, but that's kind of a once, because I'd get them every 6 weeks or so, like I said. I'd read them a lot, and they just, it's not worth it a lot of times. But that was the one thing that came across my desk or computer that I thought, this one's going to be tough to pass up.
And so currently, again, we also spoke a bit about how you guys get your casings. Currently, do you guys get all your casings from pickups, or do you typically work also with people just dropping off tires, or recyclers, or
all of it? Everything you mentioned, everything I can get.
Anything you could get.
Yeah, and that was the change. We used to work with a lot of the national accounts, but it's hard because they specialize in used tires. So a lot of my casings and stuff I couldn't get because it might have enough tread on it for him to sell it as a used tire for $20 or a larger margin. Yeah. So we did, that was, when I talk about you're leading into what I thought was our miss. Not necessarily a mistake, we did it for a reason, but I couldn't get enough of them with that channel. So you had to skip sort of the national account and go direct to the retailers in order to get all the product that we needed for manufacturing. And that's what we pivoted to today. So it's everybody. There's small people in Houston that bring me their tires from off-road shops. There's large people in Massachusetts. He sends me a load. I work with the Pacific Northwest all over the country. Wow. But we're mostly here because of freight, right? Okay. So to ship them in is pretty expensive. So I make sure that I'm getting a very specific product if it's outside of our region. But it's everybody. If they've got tires, we take them, and we're happy to talk to them about helping their business out.
And I know, you guys are very close to port. Has, I guess, out of seas exports been considered before, or is that not feasible?
It's been considered, but since we focus in light truck and larger sizes, the international market doesn't have the light truck.
Okay.
Light truck is North America, right, in general.
Get it.
But we've also kind of wanted to stay stay focused. It's probably the one thing I loved about Goodyear was that, focus on what you do. We're an all-American company. We support local environments. We buy our rubber from here. We get our product from here. Our labor's here. So we try. If we had to grow, would we look internationally? I never say never, but I like to stay very focused on what we are and what we do well, and we like to take American products and remanufacture them and redistribute them here in North America.
Oh, that was going to be the next question, actually. Yeah, have you considered selling the product, I guess, in other markets that's not the U.S.? But I guess in a way, it makes sense that you already have a demand issue because of the casing. So I guess in order to be able to even consider that, you would have to solve the casing issue.
Yeah, and that's where it gets, and we've always known that. So part of here is there's people listening, look, and if you have accounts or you have national accounts or anything where you're the retailer and you would like a better value to get rid of your scrap tires, we're the call. Treadwright and Wild Dog Recycling work together, and that's our recycling company that we've set up to be able to handle that, to make sure the plant's fed. And that was one of our big changes in 2023, was setting up a recycling company, because one kind of feeds the other. We had sort of didn't want to vertically integrate that for a long time, because we had good partners. It's just as we've grown, we utilized all that we could out of a sort of a secondary buying option. So the only way to make it to where we could really grow the plant is to vertically integrate that recycling through Wild Dog Recycling Company.
Okay, and have you guys ever considered perhaps selling? Do you guys sell used tires at all, or no?
We do. We're actually considering that for 2024, and the only reason we are is because when you get that much recycling, there is another market that a lot of the retailers don't look at, but there's a whole industry around just used tires. But it's really dangerous in my opinion. And when I walked you through the plant, I showed you sort of our key new piece of equipment, and it's X-ray. When you're looking at a used tire, and frankly, anything on the road's a used tire. So, if you're driving around on it, it's been repaired, or you ran a roll in a nail. So, but there are people that struggle even beyond what you would buy a Treadwright for, or a Toyo or a Michelin. So if you think about that, it's $400 or $500 for those Toyos or Michelin or Goodyear Kevlars, or my wife's a fan of Nokian, loves their all-season tires from the Pacific Northwest. Yeah. But they are $400 or $500 tires, and then you have Treadwrights, which are remanufactured and some of the most affordable in the price point range, and they're still $190, $200, $175. And then there's folks that really struggle, and your family's not safe driving around on no 30 seconds of tread wear. The tread bar wears around like 30 seconds. So you need 5 or 6. So a lot of times people change their tires out earlier and we bring them in. So what we're going to do heading into 2024 is we're actually going to run them through the NDT machines, the balancing machines, the X-ray equipment. And we're going to provide a certified pre-owned tire that we can put out there that's another level of purchasing power for folks, so they can spend the money on their kids' soccer balls and that kind of thing, that they can still get. Because the market exists. If you drive up and down Houston Navigation, just down the road, I guarantee you will see 12
everywhere.
used tire shops. They are. And that is its own market. Yeah. And so since we've got into Wild Dog Recycling, we're going to be selling those used tires, but the difference will be through our website and our e-commerce plays. We're going to be doing them at a peak of safety. And we're actually going to work in 2024 to look at the industry changes, because I don't think used tires should be sold unless they have a non-destructive testing and an X-ray on them. I don't think it should. Yeah. It's just like our tires. Like if you sell anything that's been ran through and processed to end of life and you're redistributing that product, I think you have to have some non-destructive testing. I think you have to have X-ray. I think you have to have those things in place just to be a good steward, not only of the environment, for humanity.
Exactly.
And I think that's a good way to push some companies and large companies to do a better job of that. And so we want to not only expand what we're doing, but there's another level, because when I was a kid, I'll bring this up, I was probably 12 or 13 before I realized that tires should have matching sidewalls, because we were poor, right? And when mom needed a car, she was 16 years old when I was born, they didn't have a lot of money. And we used to just go down to the junkyards back in the day with your Chilton magazine if we needed an alternator, or a tire, or whatever. And I remember they just put it on. Yeah. They were black, and as long as it fits, height, right? Then it ran okay. So we're going to bring that back a little bit, but I think a lot of people don't know that market exists, and you do, because you've seen the communities, and us on the east side of Houston, we see these communities and the needs for that. And again, I'm not knocking anybody that can buy Michelin or Toyo. My wife buys Nokian when she can, and she does that. And that's good, because I need all the tires purchased to provide value through all of those different price point areas. But if you do it right, you should be able to recycle those through and give value to everybody. Not everything can be a Toyo. Not everything can be a Treadwright. There are situations where that's the best situation or the best cost for that person. So I think we're going to work on all of those markets heading into next year.
That's a very exciting sector. I think, is the used tire play going to be wholesale more to other smaller shops, or is it going to be actually B2C through e-commerce like U-Tire?
It'll be all three, a lot like Treadwright is.
Okay.
We'll have an e-commerce option. We'll have starting next month, we'll actually be wholesaling out of our facility here. And we'll also be letting the stores come around. So we'll let everybody know locally that we have them here. But anything we run through the internet or we sell directly through our company will be certified pre-owned, and that's NDT and inspected. It'll have a little bit more cost to it, but I'm not going to sell anything direct to consumer that I know that I validated. I know it balanced. I know the structure was good, and I know the integrity inside that you can't see. I have an X-ray picture of that, and we ran that through our QC program before we sold it.
So typically the viewer, again, there's some people that focus on tire recyclers or tire recycling, which they pick up from stores. They sort the tires A, B, and C, and then sell them to other shops for $5, $10, or $15. Then these shops buy them for, let's say $15, and then resell them for $80 installed. Let's say something like that. So I think definitely if you're already doing the X-ray and you're checking them and you're balancing them, there's definitely that markup to go all the way up to 80, possibly even more, because you're not just buying something on the blind. You're pretty much guaranteeing in a way that the tire is good. It's operational.
Yeah, and even someone, I've done this because of where we go a lot of times. Back in my Goodyear days, we always had brands on vehicles, right? So you had that.
Yeah.
But, I was running around on those Kevlars, and they're not cheap. And I tore one up. And it was like, okay, now I got to go buy 4 more because they were at about, I probably had 730 seconds on them. Nothing I was ready to change out or anything. But I went online, I found one, and I had it shipped in that had roughly the same tread depth, so it would ride well. And that's because I know I bought one at a time. And it was still a value for me because I didn't have to pay $400, but I paid with freight like $160.
Yeah.
So there's some of the tires that if they're good as singles can still be sold out at a great value and sold across all the markets. But I would have felt a lot better buying that tire if I saw underneath it non-destructive testing, balancing, X-ray, 6-month warranty. The things that I think are, we kind of talked about Walmart just jokingly, right? If you don't take us, I really will. I think it's kind of the value that is the emerging market. So if you had to, a lot of people talk about it, what's next? In our industry, I do think tires, premier, entry-level price point is fairly saturated. So they're really fighting over the same customer. But I think what everyone's ignoring is the price customer, the Treadwright customer, and the super value customer that might be certified pre-owned. And I think that market has huge growth opportunities that hasn't been standardized, hasn't put in the great quality, hasn't offered the warranties. They just hustle them around for cash. But the reality is that customer base is really strong. There's a reason Walmart is strong, Target's strong. A lot of these areas and local businesses that you see are still thriving in these different communities. And that's where we're going to go. That's where Treadwright is going to go and take share. Not from the people that I love. I'm not going to take any share from Goodyear, Dunlop, Kelly, or Bridgestone, or Firestone, or Toyo. But I am going to take it from Westlake. I am going to take it from Cosmo. I am going to take it from Venom. I'm coming for you because I don't want the imports here. I don't want stuff coming in on containers through LA and dumped across California or Texas or Florida. There's enough good products in here that would give, Americans value that we don't need that, right? We just have to, and it's better for the environment, and they're not in lakes and streams, and, it's the one thing that does both. I mean, I'm not against making money, don't get me wrong. I'll do it like anybody. I'll do it for a varying degree, but it's a lot more interesting when I know that I can do a program where I go out on my golf course and I say, hey, I saw when it got low, there's about 15 tires. Can I go get them? And they're great. We just bring a little trailer and we pick them up. We take them out. Some we recycle. Some ended up in a a football field, and one of them was in pretty good shape, so we remanufactured it, and that's a cool business that does both, and that was another part that excited me too.
Wow, that's very interesting. So how many tires would you guys say you're saving from landfills?
We do north of 100,000 a year.
Wow.
Even in our small little world.
Yeah, there's, I mean, I don't
and
think...
probably double that if I take scrap in that. But we turn, a good 100,000 into good tires, good Treadwrights, but then we have some used, and then we recycle some. So maybe a couple 100,000 if you look at all of them that come through the facility.
But that's still a very, very small portion of what's out there, right? Like
it is. That's what's crazy. That's where I'm really excited about Wild Dog Recycling, because I think that we can do that at such a lower cost than some of the national companies like Liberty Tire, or they're probably the largest, but there's a lot of them that go around and pick up national accounts and that, and they do them at high fees. There's a lot of tire derived fuel that they use them for, and I just think there's a better way to do it. Right. So we're going to challenge retailers and customers across Texas and nationally to rethink about that and let us pick them up. Let us do a better job of handling that product. Let us, because I think it's going to affect communities. Because if you think about it, if you're just looking at a small area like East Houston, and we can go get those tires from them, those stores now paid less for me to pick them up, which is great. Then I have more tires for them to buy at less price. They then can make a little bit more money. Their customers had to pay less, so they've got money now to go to the stores and spend it. Right, on the right things. And all of this gets kind of churning through that environmental cycle, not just the tires, but the cash, right? And getting stronger when we talk about our economy or our local economy. And I think that that's going to have a lot of value over time, and we're committed to making that our number one focus going into next year, is putting that value in place so we can ultimately recycle not just the product, but the cash back into our local communities.
Very, very exciting business model. Do you guys have something in mind in terms of software though, or in terms of how to automate even further the process? Like, a lot of these waste haulers are still using pen and paper. They're still, it's still kind of like very traditional in a sense.
Yeah, traditional manifest, right?
Exactly, yeah. So do you see a world where perhaps all that could be digital?
Yeah, it is now. A lot of that's what's great about apps and you young whippersnappers, I'll call you, that go out and make software and apps for that. So you pick it up, you can just put it in, how many tires you've got. When they come in, as you saw, everything's barcoded. Yeah. When they're buying, because that's a great point, when people are going to buy containers from us or pick that up, all of our certified pre-owned tires are going to be barcoded, inspected, identified. We're going to have exactly what we've got. The way they do it now is they just, and I feel bad for some of the people that are in that sort of certified pre-owned used tire sales, because they've got to go to a large company and they just stick 1,000 in. 20% of the load's bad, and they have to just eat it and then redispose of that because they can't even tell them exactly what's on there. It's called the jelly bean sale. They give them, green ones and white ones and black ones and blue ones. Yeah. But a lot of the guys, because they're rural, need a certain light truck segment or more 19s than that. And I've always looked at that business model and thought it'd be very difficult if I owned a used tire store. That I know, think about if you went to the mall and bought a bag full of deodorant, clothes, shoes, a belt, snacks, coffee, and you went to walk out and realized 20% of it was junk. That's what the used tires have to do. That's how they buy. It's just scrap rates that are guaranteed into it, instead of really telling them what they've got, verifying that they're certified, giving them warranties on every product. So they can't even really put that product into their inventory control system because their purchase order and their invoices don't even match, because what they ordered they don't even get. Yeah. So I think the industry, to your point, has a lot of opportunity in terms of software identification, manifest, POs, that type of thing that can be a lot better, and we're going to do that.
And that's again, that's actually what I do right now. So my focus primarily is innovation through software, specifically in the tire industry, because I have that background. And
afterwards, we're going to have a little talk.
Oh yeah, it excites me. Man. Anything that has to do software and automation or simplifying a process, thinking of from 10 steps to 9 to 8 to 2, that's really what drives me.
Well, that's what's in the plant right now that makes me crazy as a process engineer is this was an R&D facility.
Okay.
We are now manufacturing out of an R&D facility, but we're missing all the monorail, the automation, the pieces of it, that when our lease is up, we're going to do a move and then do a restructure against that, right?
Okay,
So
got it.
we had a long lease that we're within the last year of.
wow.
We didn't, for me, until the supply chain was done, so we thought we'd work on the supply chain and then move the facility and then put in the automation after that. But we've been selling out of an R&D facility for the last couple of years.
Wow. Really, I know you're passionate about helping veterans.
Yeah.
What can we tell other business owners who want to help but don't know how to? And why is it important to help veterans?
Well, I've actually struggled to get a lot of veteran activity even within Houston. There's a few groups that we always invite out. We do meet and greets, and we look for jobs. We look for employment. We try to prioritize that for people coming in if they've just got out of the military. Because I was fortunate in my area, they had a structured process for us to get out, graduate with a degree, set up positions. It's not that way for all of them, right?
Wow.
Whether it's Navy, Coast Guard, Marines. So you really have to work hard with your local veteran groups, the VFWs, and if there's a base close, they usually have some sort of program for exit strategies with those folks, because I find that the discounts are fine, you give them more opportunities, what you might see at a Dick's or a Sports Authority or
right.
whatever, because they have that kind of stuff. But I find that we've been the most successful by going to the organizations and helping with employment.
Okay.
Looking for prioritizing those people to come into Treadwright and give them opportunities to grow and learn engineering skills, whether it's welding or mold repair or even operating equipment. Because people that come out of the military, I think a lot of people don't know how standardized the process of work is. Whether you're a boatsman's mate or a nuclear engine room supervisor or a gunny, doesn't matter. What you're doing is so perfect for manufacturing and operations because they don't realize how skilled they are.
Yeah.
It may not be your typical degree or the very specific computer skill you need, but those folks can learn, and they'll learn the fastest of anybody that you'd hire. But I find that if I'm reaching out to other people and how we do it, that's how we try to bring them in, because there's also a lot of, not so much in the Navy and the Air Force, but when you're talking about Army and Marines and the people on the ground. I was in the first Iraqi war, but I was on a submarine floating in the ocean.
Okay.
So I didn't have a lot of the problems that a lot of folks had, right? But working with those groups, the ability to find stuff to do, to stay active, because a lot of what you see from veterans that are struggling, it's a lot of minor health and mental health issues, that a lot of it's just trying to be active, keeping your mind sharp, having those processes to follow. But most of them, each city has their own different veterans group. Bases have that exit, onboarding, BFWs, things like that. Work with a lot of new folks that maybe been out a year or two, but we try to do that. That's what I recommend a lot of other folks do, because that's what they need. They need a little bit of a opportunity, and I would tell everybody that owns a company, I believe it's the best source, because the military is like, this is almost terrible. I was enlisted, so I didn't come out of an officer program. I went to boot camp, right? I walked through. They teach you how to brush your teeth. Yeah. Every detail of your life, they go through training to do. So it doesn't really matter where you come from, your humble beginnings or whatever. Those people are used to doing standardized work, and they like it.
Okay.
And it's really a good area to be for I think those reasons, and you'll have more success with your HR programs if you look at it that way.
Okay. And how do you stay productive and manage your time? You're a very busy person. I'm sure you come up with the to-do list of 20 and go home with the to-do list of 30. But how do you actually stay productive and manage time?
I wish I could say I've been better like yourself in software and alerts and things like that, and that exists, right? You can't survive in the world without a really good Google Calendar and those types of things, which is pretty standard for most folks. But for me, I'm productive because I let my people work. You know, I really do try to find the best people and give them as much responsibility as possible. And that takes care of what I would consider a lot of the big picture stuff that would keep an owner of a company or a manager or supervisor. That's when you really start to struggle, is if you don't have the people around you in a position of they know they can execute, they have the authority to execute, you train them to do those types of things. And then when it's my stuff, I'm an old school list guy. I'm a guy who writes 6 things down, 8 things down a day, and I literally check them off like old school style. And then what I don't, I carry to the next page, and I flip the page and I start over. And that's what I call my Anthony emergency sheet, the stuff that like I can only do. Okay. I have to solve them, or I have to make progress on something. And you saw some of my meetings in between our talks today. And I just focus on that. I focus on the things that I know the team can't do. But if I know they're even half capable, I shove it to the sides, because you find that your people are really good. If you get in an organization where you have too much command and control, you'll see it stop because everybody's waiting for you to tell them the next step. I have a saying here: if the train's coming at you down the tracks, I really don't care if you jump left or right. Just jump. Okay. Now, if you jump the wrong side, you're going to have a long walk home, but we can still fight the fight. So it doesn't matter. Do something, right? We'll worry about your decision later or that. And so, you know, it allows us to keep moving. It allows people to be creative and interesting and successful. And then whatever's left, if I had my black book, I'd show you. There's a bullet item and there's 6 to 8 things. And then I take notes and I flip it and I do it every day.
Okay, no, but that's the beauty of it, right? We all have, I mean, you've reached the level of success, and some people get so overwhelmed by the actual, just not even the productivity part, but just how am I going to manage so many tasks, and then they get stuck there.
Yeah. And my staff, you know, like your meeting, and they book them, and they tell me things that they think are important. So I even give my staff half my schedule. Okay. Because if it's important enough, I can't evaluate everybody. I can't, even you, right, Fernando, I can't vet you. I don't always know exactly even who I'm going to meet with a lot of times, because I let Maria handle that. I let my marketing people handle it. I let my engineering people handle it. And then I'll get into it, and if I thought the direction was off, we'll talk about it later. But I'm always excited that they created an opportunity. And I always want them to say, hey, I thought it was great. I enjoyed our time here with you, and I do that. But that's what saved me over time, is just the fact that I let them work. Because as you know, you'll get pulled out, and every leader, supervisor, a mom or a dad or whoever you are, you're going to get yanked into space where you can't do what you would normally do. So your team has to know when you're there or traveling or doing that there's nothing you can't do when I'm gone. You have the authority, you know, can't go spend $1 million, but, you know, in terms of like the facility, pick a side, jump. The train's coming down, I got it. It's a long walk or it's a short walk, but either way you're walking. You only run into trouble when you become paralyzed. And do that and attack them off, get them done at the end of the day, usually pretty good shape.
All right. No, well, you already told us about the future of Treadwright Tires. I'm excited for it. Any words of wisdom for individuals out there who are looking to get into the recycling business or the manufacturing business, like a younger self, like look at yourself like a younger you? What type of advice would you be giving that one person with the possible doubts you had at one point?
You know, I would look at the organization beyond the dollars and cents. Which your generation is a lot better than mine. We were, you know, X generation was greedy. You know, we'd switch jobs for $1. You know, we were terrible, and that's because it was different times, right? I think for the younger generation, yourself, the things that you guys have really figured out, and gals, is that it's more than the paycheck and the specifics. Look at, does the company have a way of doing things that you can align yourself with and see yourself doing tomorrow? To give you your example, I didn't always agree on the specifics, but I always understood what they were doing with their brand and their products and what was important. And I could attach myself to that. I didn't always do that in my career. I found myself in places that when I think back, I shouldn't have been there. It was a divergent vision. It wasn't going to work. And I think that's probably the most important thing to look at, because as long as you're obviously there because you're a good accountant, you're a good engineer, you're a good developer, you're all of those things, but you won't feel comfortable. You won't have that feeling when you go home, because you're going to disagree with your boss, your coworkers, the people around you every day on something. Yeah. But those are the details. If you all know that you like the recycling and you like the fact that you're giving back in some way, you like the fact that they don't accept a hostile work environment, they prioritize people over profit. Yeah. And because some of those things really get to people at night and at home. So I'd love to say I've got some genuine magic engineering tale to tell, but I found that when I felt good, those things were aligned. Even when I was 18 and in the Navy to 53 today. And if I didn't, when I think about it, I went somewhere for the wrong reasons, and I struggled there the whole time. And it's because I didn't think about that going in. I thought, oh, I got a promotion. Oh, I got a better title. Oh, I'm going to have more money for my kids, or the wrong reasons, because I can tell you, you can work your way out of less money. You can be frugal, you can do things, but if you find yourself in an environment that's not aligned with what you want to do, feel, and be, you'll struggle. And that's what I would say. Pay attention to that first step to being in good shape.
Hey, well, Anthony, man, thank you so much.
Sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming to Treadwright. We enjoyed having you.
Yeah, and do you want to give a contact info if somebody wants to sell casings, or how to contact you, or just Maria, or?
Yeah, it's you can find everything on treadwright.com, and Anthony at treadwright.com or Maria at treadwright.com, because we're small. Unless you get another Anthony, you're going to find me, and I don't mind telling people that. Or at Wild Dog Recycling, Maria at Wild Dog Recycling, because we really want to expand that. So if you reach out to her, she's sort of the director of all that stuff. She makes everything happen and make my life easier.
That's awesome. Earlier. Yeah, no, that's great, man. No, okay, perfect. So we'll be sure to leave a link in the video, and thank you again, man, so much for your time.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.